I will now introduce our keynote speaker, the Rev. Charles F. Boyer. Reverend F. Boyer serves as the pastor of St. James AME Church in Somerset, New Jersey. He is a social justice activist with the focus of calling the Black church back to its liberationist roots. He currently serves as the coordinator of the Covenant Project to eradicate mass incarceration, a joint project of the Social Commission of the AME Church and the Payne and Turner Theological Seminars. He also mentors Somerset County returning citizens, serves with the New Jersey Campaign Against Isolation Confinement, collaborates with various organizations such as the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, and the United Methodist Board of Church and Societies Faith in Action. Please welcome Reverend Boyer.
Let's give it up for these marvelous young people. I feel like I am amongst some giants, some future leaders. Y'all excuse me, I'm so accustomed to saying things like, let the church say amen. So if any of that slips out, you just roll with it. But certainly to the Decarcerate, the Garden State movement, to Plainfield KISS, to People's Organization for Progress, to the Plainfield View, to all of you in this place, it is certainly an honor to come and talk about such a weighty issue, a very weighty issue. When Bob called me and asked me if I would be willing to come and speak at this event, it brought back so many good feelings, because I'm born and raised in Plainfield, New Jersey. I'm a Plainfield native. And I remember coming to this library and being upstairs and dropping pennies into that fountain. I went to Emerson Elementary School before it's that beautiful thing. This is the old building, not the new building. And I went to Maxon Middle School. And I grew up here in Plainfield, and we grew up poor. I had both of my parents. I was exceptionally blessed to have a father in a home, but we were poor. We would have to ask our neighbors if we can plug an extension cord into their house in order for us to have electric and heat in the wintertime. And so I grew up angry. I grew up very angry because I had a father in the house, but yet and still we were suffering. And so I grew up with a chip on my shoulder, and I was determined to be the man. I was going to be the best, the hottest rapper of all time. And I rode with that. And I grew up on the east end of Plainfield, and growing up with that, if any of you remember back in the day, you couldn't drive, and I'm talking once I got to be 17, you couldn't drive across Terrell Road in the Scotch Plains without getting stopped as a black man. That's right. And that's what happened. I continuously got stopped. I spent so many nights in Scotch Plains, holding cell, and Westfield and Cranford holding cells. I started to think they were going to charge me rent. But I was blessed. I was blessed because I did have parents, even though we were poor. Somehow or another, we were always able to have representation. And so I didn't suffer the consequences many of my friends did. Most of my friends ended up in prison. And so that's what brings me to have some passion about this particular issue. How many of us in here know someone who has been incarcerated or is currently incarcerated? And that's pretty much all of us. Every time I ask that question, especially in front of black folks, there is absolutely no one who does not raise their hand. There are more black people in prison right now than there were in slavery in 1850. The gravity, let that soak in for a minute. More black people in prison right now than there was in slavery in 1850. This is certainly the civil rights issue of our day. I often ask myself, and I often ask the people around me, if you were around during the time of slavery, what would you do? We all have these ideas of grandeur, like I'd be Frederick Douglass, I'd be Harriet Tubman, I'd be standing up, I'd be doing this and I'd be doing that. But don't you know that there were so many folks who just didn't even really realize what was going on? It just was what it was. And it took people concerned, it took people passionate to understand the gravity of what was going on around them in order to stand up and to take a stand. So here we are. Here we are again with an issue that is affecting our communities in many ways greater, more subtle, more sly, more undercover. It's not so blatant, but it's very real. We stay locked behind bars, and yet we hear so little about it. There are massive racial disparities when it comes down to who goes to prison. And most of the people who are in prison are there, most of the people of color who are in prison are there over minor drug offenses. Minor drug offenses. So what does that mean? That means that Hakeem with a dime bag will end up in prison when Billy with an eighth of coke probably will get a slap on the wrist. That is the dynamic that we have seen. The statistics bear it out. And so our first sense is to say, well, black folks, we just tend to be in the street and get in more trouble and do more stuff than other folks. But the statistics don't bear that out. Blacks don't tend to use and sell drugs more than anybody else. But the difference is that our communities are targeted far more than anyone else. Right. And so how do we deal with the reality that most young people are probably just going to experiment? How many of us experimented when we were young? Those of us who were, don't try to be ultra-righteous now. If you experiment, I'll let you keep your hands down. All right. But should we lose our lives over experimentation? That's the question that we have to ask. Other folks don't lose their lives. We don't have occupied communities in Westfield, but we have occupied communities in North New Jersey, in many urban suburbs, in many urban communities. So the thing that we have to understand here is that mass incarceration ultimately is an extension of slavery. And here's why I say that. Once the Emancipation Proclamation took place, we thought we were free. We thought we were going somewhere. But shortly after that, what was created was a convict leasing system. And that convict leasing system was a system that was set up in order to pick black men up on the streets over petty crimes, bring them in front of courts, weigh them with unbearable fines, and the only way they could keep from going to prison for insurmountable amount of years and have an insurmountable amount of fines was if there was a white man there to vouch for them and pay the fine for them, and then they would be in servitude. The slavery by another name. Right. And that peonage system, so once that was fought, and it was fought bitterly, and we all know the civil rights movement, there was backlash to the gains that African Americans were making in regards to voting and whatnot. And there was a concerted effort by the Nixon administration to put forth a tough on crime agenda in order to win the campaign. And so they sat down and decided, I'm not making this up, this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is on the record, where the Nixon administration put together a game plan to paint blacks as criminals in order to put together a Get Tough on Crime campaign that would shuffle people of color into prisons and that would ultimately push down their voting rights. And this is where we are even today. And it is not just a Republican issue. Bill Clinton was one of the worst people when it came down to tough on crime, 3 strikes you're out, and whatnot. So both Republicans and Democrats have contributed to this ongoing demise of people of color in prison. The other thing we need to understand is when we say, oh, well, that's prison. It can't really be related to slavery, but it really is, because there is a profit motive to it all. Many local police departments are funded federally, and they're funded based on, a lot of the times, the level of drug arrests that are taking place. And so those federal funds keep a lot of smaller departments going. And we see a lot of what happened with that out in Ferguson, where we see these enormous funds. Not only that, there are privately owned businesses that create the clothes that the prisoners wear, the food that the prisoners eat, the transportation that goes in and out of these facilities. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. A multi-billion-dollar industry that makes slavery look like a small business. And so we have to understand what is ultimately going on with all of this. And then on top of it all, we have corporations that are in the prison business. Literal private organizations that are hired by the state in order to, and are given contracts and ensure that the state will keep a minimum amount of prisoners on the inside in order to keep the prisons full. What are we going to do about this is the question that we need to answer today. Are we going to look in the face of modern day slavery and be the folks that we criticize, that were sitting back and doing absolutely nothing in the days of our ancestors? That's the question. That's the question that we have to ask today. And I know that you said, I have 20 minutes, but I don't have 20 minutes in me. The issue is simple. It's just that simple. This is nothing new. It's been going on. It's just been morphing. And it's right in front of us. It's profit-driven. And the question we have to ask today is, what are we going to do about it? One of the things I was so happy when I found Bob. Bob's on fire. If I had 20 people like Bob in the church, everything would be all right. Bob is on fire. He doesn't stop moving. He just keeps on going. He's passionate about this issue. And when I found the Decarcerate movement, I was looking for someone to partner with on this issue in New Jersey. And when I found Bob, I was overjoyed because this Decarcerate the Garden State initiative is the right initiative. We put together, in our district, I head up the Ministerial Alliance Social Justice issues, and we put together a bullet point list to all of the lawmakers here in Central Jersey and told them that these are the things that we expect. And they all came back with, well, we're working on body cameras, we're working on this, we're working on that. But none of the things they said they were working on actually hit the point. But what Decarcerate is asking for, to reduce the prison population. How many know it's not freedom unless people get free? The same, this is the same country where we still have black and brown men in prison over marijuana charges in some states, while now non-black and brown people are setting up businesses in other countries selling marijuana. So the things we have seen destroy and dismantle our communities are now sanctioned by the state. And how can we have that going on sanctioned in one state and we still have people in prison for multiple years over the same issue in another state? Right. We must demand that New Jersey begins to decarcerate, begins to scale this thing down. I'm going to give you one last statistic and then I'm done. When we look at the fact that African Americans only make up 13% of the United States population, but we make up nearly 50% of the prison population. What does that mean? That we're 6-7 times more likely to go to prison over the same offenses that other people don't even see a courtroom over. Now, in New Jersey, we're not 6 or 7 times more likely. New Jersey, we're 12 times more likely. New Jersey is the 3rd worst state in the nation when it comes to racial disparities and who sees the prison and who doesn't. This is an issue that must be addressed. This is the civil rights issue of our time. I hear people saying, and I agree to some extent, that education is the civil rights issue of our time. I agree with that to a certain extent. Education is always a civil rights issue. But when we were locked up in slavery, we knew education was a tool to help those, but we knew we had to fight as an entire country to get people free. And that's where we are right now. And mass incarceration is nothing less than modern-day slavery. So I ask you all today not to leave this place, until you have invested yourself in this issue, invested yourself in seeing fellow human beings treated like human beings, fellow human beings set free from a system of bondage that other folks are getting rich off of. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Is the speaker of our own Plainfield, Sabrina Littleton. Sabrina is one of the 3 co-founders with Amanda Garcia and Nia Ali of Plainfield KISS, which means Keeping Youth in Streets Safe. KISS started to call for peace on the streets of Plainfield after some of our young friends were victims of gun violence. KISS recognizes the connections between crime and street violence to the issues of joblessness and hopelessness that results from the mass incarceration of our people. Welcome, Sabrina.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Everybody who's on before knows I'm like ridiculously nervous. But I'm just going to pretend you're not here. I'd like to address why I'm here and why I've chosen to take a stand. And anyone who knows me knows that I have a 4-year-old son.
Right.
And his name is Caden. He's all over everything that I do. He's the reason why I'm here. Because I'm raising a little black boy in America.
All right.
And I'm raising him against a system that's set up for him to fail. And what kind of mother would I be if I allowed him to go into the world uneducated or unchanged if I didn't try? I'm also here because I'm from Plainfield and I genuinely want to see good come from Plainfield. I have a personal stake in the youth in Plainfield because if no one believes in them, then there's no hope. There's no incentive for them to be as great as they can be. So Plainfield youth, who are underrepresented right now, if no one else has hope for you, I do. And I hope that they find comfort that I'm here. I'm also here because I'm young enough to know that this is still my fight, and I'm old enough to know that the generation behind me needs to be educated to inherit this fight.
Right. Yeah.
What I'm going to speak to you about is how mass incarceration affects the youth directly. By speaking about the school to prison pipeline. Does anybody know what the school to prison pipeline is? At least some people are educated, most people aren't. It's a national trend where low-income minority and special needs youth are being funneled from the public school system into the American justice system, well, criminal justice system. There's these no tolerance policies that are allowing for suspensions and expulsions and harsh punishments for things that could be used as a learning opportunity, and they're turning into criminal matters. There's increased police involvement in matters that should be dealt with by school officials. These learning experiences are, like I said, are turning into criminal matters, which starts the revolving door for these youth to be involved in the criminal justice system. They're being arrested, they're being sent to detention centers and behavior centers. Special needs are being institutionalized earlier for unnecessary reasons. And once you're in the criminal system, there's a negative stigma that's attached to you and goes along with you throughout your life into adulthood, which continues this involvement with the revolving door in the prison system and incarceration. If you notice that school settings are looking a lot more like prisons and detention centers than they are looking like educational establishments. There are uniformed police officers with guns on their hips, there are metal detectors and security cameras, and just the structure of authority and dress codes are even looking more like prison codes. Who benefits from the school to prison pipeline? Not you and not your children, obviously. America imprisons more of their youth than any other country in the world. That's scary. Private companies investing in prisons for profit are the ones that are benefiting from this. Private prison companies typically enter into contracts with governments that commit prisoners and then pay a per diem or monthly rate for each prisoner in the facility. Our Black and Latino children are essentially for sale. Bodies are needed in these prisons to promote a higher profit. So they either have to criminalize more things or they have to incarcerate at a younger age, which is scary for our youth. America's criminal justice system is the third largest employer in the nation. More money is being spent imprisoning someone than educating them. Institutions are geared towards punishment and not rehabilitation. Again, there's the revolving door. When you're being punished and not being rehabilitated, once you hit the streets again, you're heading right back in. Private prisons are popping up all over the place while public schools are closing, budgets are being cut, and our future, our children's future, my son's future, is being determined by biased, standardized testing. Communities are torn apart, destined for failure as Black and Latino men and boys are being shipped away to prison for nonviolent crimes. They're receiving harsher and lengthy sentences, leaving families broken, struggling, and desperate, forcing some to continue on the path designed specifically for them to fail. Why you should get involved, and by you I mean the youth, so this message is for your children or your family members. It's your responsibility to yourself because this affects you personally. It affects me because I have a son. He's the next generation, and when I'm finished fighting, my son will begin fighting. Being silent isn't simply an option. Not for me, it isn't. Because being silent makes you almost as guilty as the offender. The civil rights movement is not over. It was, what we learned in history was a great fight. I think we should learn from it. Some battles have won, but the war isn't over because there's still a lot of injustice and things that we need to fight for. And mass incarceration is one of the fights that I'm taking up. Thank you.
Next up is another Plainfield community organizer, veteran of many justice struggles, and chair of the Plainfield chapter of People Organization for Progress, Steve Hatcher. HOP is one of the foremost organizations advocating for justice around the issues of police brutality, economic equality, support for workers' rights against mortgage foreclosures, in support of human needs services, and a prominent justice-loving organization in the state of New Jersey. Hawk is also the initiator of the call for the Million People's March convening in July. Welcome, Steve Hatcher.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm sorry my voice is a little hoarse. Trying to get over a cold. The People's Organization for Progress is a grassroots organization. We fight for racial, social, and economic justice and peace. We have been around here in Plainfield for over 10 years doing this type of work. I tell everybody that police brutality is what brought me into being an activist. Like Brother Reed knows, we had a discussion about this before. But it's police brutality is what brought me here. But it's the violence that we do toward one another that makes me stay. We must stop the violence that we do towards one another. Then we can come out stronger and harder and with a better fight against police brutality. But as long as we are fighting one another, killing one another, and murdering one another, police brutality will never end. We will be here another 1,000 years in the same situation. So this coming July 25th, we're going to be having a demonstration against police brutality, Million People's March, against police brutality, racial injustice, and economic inequality. July 25th, we're asking everybody to come on out to try to stop so much of the violence that's going on with police brutality. What happened in Ferguson is atrocity. What happened in New York is outrageous. But those are only 2 cities that it happened to. And it's not like it only happened there. It is happening everywhere. It really is. And so we ask everybody, July 25th, to come on out. Police brutality is not ending. We must come out and fight it together. I can remember years ago when we were out there fighting for Earl Faison. A young brother in 1999 was shot down, was beat to death, and killed by the Orange Police Department. Earl Faison there was a police officer that was killed. Her name was Joyce Carnegie. East Orange police officer was killed. And the police went out looking for someone that would fit the description. And they come and they found Earl Faison. Earl Faison did not even fit the description of the person that they were looking for. They found him and they beat him to death. They beat him to death, and the family came to Pop. And so Pop was out there marching for 5 years of protesting, 5 years of demonstrating, 5 years of rallying against the violence that had happened to Earl Faison. And for the first time in New Jersey, police officers finally had went to jail for what happened with Earl Faison, what had happened with Earl Faison. The thing about it, what I'm trying to say is, they did not go to jail for the murder of Earl Faison. They only went to jail for violating Earl Faison's civil rights. That's all it was. But yet still his brother was murdered. He was killed. And so ever since then I stay here. And I stay and I continue to fight against police brutality because it has to stop. And it would be one thing if I seen it happening all over. It would be one thing if I seen 4 black police officers shooting down a young white child 41 times with a wallet in his hand. That would be one thing. But when we never see that happening, black police officers shooting down white children, the way that white police officers shoot down African-American young men, something is wrong with that. But the only thing that's worse than that is when enough people don't get involved. When enough people would say, well, let's just pray about it. Let's just take that to the church. We need to pray about it on Sunday. We need to take that to the church and pray about it. That is why it is happening. That is why it is happening. We must stop trying to answer all of our prayers, all of our situations in prayer. Jesus Christ, he took it to the streets. He fought that. He didn't say that. He did not try to say that, well, let me just pray for it. No, brothers and sisters. At some point in time, we have got to get involved and to fight back. So we ask you this coming July the 25th in Newark at West Market Street and Springfield Avenue at 12 noon. We're asking everybody to come out and join the People's Organization for Progress as we have a million people march against police brutality, racial injustice, and economic inequality. Thank you very much.
Next, we are honored to have with us Courtney Perales-Rise. Courtney is representing on behalf of New Jersey Youth for Immigrant Liberation. She will be highlighting the commonality between the issue of mass incarceration and the issue of immigrant detention. New Jersey Youth for Immigrant Liberation is fighting for immigrants to be free of persecution, fear, and intimidation, the right of all to free education. They are dedicated to fighting anything that threatens the right to stay in our homes and lands, promotion of class consciousness, and fighting for the dignity of all work. They reject divisive infighting over limited resources and work to overcome individualism. Decarcerate the Garden State welcomes a partnership with any organization that stands for all of that. Welcome, Courtney.
Hi everyone. I'm not used to speaking in front of people, so if I am shaky, that's why. So I just actually recently got involved with the New Jersey Youth for Immigrant Liberation, and it's an organization that I'm really happy to be a part of. I'm a representative actually from my university's dream team. And so some of the things that we do, just to give you a little bit of my background, is we do Futuro Mentorship, which is where we go to WALDEF, the Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund in Trenton, and we mentor junior, senior, undocumented students. So that would be like SAT prep and working on college essays and stuff. We are also working on an anti-wage theft campaign, which is essentially helping the vulnerable immigrant community in our university's area, and working with them to let them know about their rights and about ordinances that our Human Services Commission has passed, which are meant to protect them. And they recently passed a landscaper's ordinance, which says that if a landscaper does not pay their employee their fair wages, then they'll have their license revoked. And so it's things like that that are really important to making sure that people are aware of, and also know that the community is there for them and that they're protected. And so we're really thankful that we have a community that works with us to make sure that the immigrant community is accepted and feels welcomed, and we know that's not the case in a lot of other places. We also do a Chasing a Dream scholarship, so we fundraise for undocumented students to raise money so that they can have a scholarship for college, because it's particularly difficult for them to obtain funds for school, and oftentimes people find themselves in dire straits and really just give up on the idea of college because they don't think they can. We also do visits to the Elizabeth Detention Center in New Jersey. And so I've actually been a part of that project. And essentially we go to people who have signed up for visitors, and we meet with people who have been detained. Some people have been detained for years or months. And we really just have it be an opportunity for them to talk about their experiences, to vent to us, to tell us about any violations they've been having in the detention center against their rights, to see if we can offer any legal services to them through a nonprofit that we also work with, which is First Friends. And so if they have any cases that we think they can provide legal services to, we kind of give them contact information to the organization we work with. Immigration detention is something I'm going to be talking about. It's something that's really important to me, and just immigration in general, because of my own background coming from an immigrant family, and seeing a lot of the stigma and xenophobia and racism that is all interconnected and plays a part in this huge system of immigration detention. I guess so, just for some facts, in the United States, the Department of Homeland Security holds over 400,000 immigrants in over 250 facilities across the country. And according to the bed mandates, around 34,000 beds must be filled at the quota. And so what that does is that it encourages officials from ICE, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement to apprehend and detain even low priority undocumented people. So this could be people who didn't commit, or maybe committed like minor offenses, people who contribute to the community, but it's like an incentive that they have for these officers to just apprehend anywhere they can in order to fulfill the quota. So among those unnecessarily detained are survivors of torture, victims of trafficking, families with small children, the elderly, asylum seekers, people with serious mental and medical health conditions, and permanent residents who are facing deportation because of old or minor crimes that they committed. And so once in these detention centers, people face violations against their basic rights. Actually, this past August 1st, 2014, MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, along with other organizations, filed a complaint against the Carnes Family Detention Center in Texas for sexual abuse and harassment that the facility guards committed against some of the women in the detention center. And so some of those things included the guards calling them their girlfriends, waking them up in the middle of the night and asking for sex, touching them in front of their children. And so these are complaints that have been filed, but no one can really do anything about them. Part of the reason is because they're not U.S. citizens who don't really have rights in this country. So it's particularly difficult to get lawyers to represent them and to go through with their cases. Oftentimes the women won't even press charges or won't even seek further action. So another thing that I did this past summer, just a transition, is I was a part of an organization called No Más Muertes, which is No More Deaths. It's a humanitarian aid organization in Arizona. And basically they work to decrease the number of deaths that happen along the border each year. And so I don't know hundreds of deaths happen along the border each year. It's something that a lot of people don't really know about. It's something I didn't really know about actually until 2 years ago. And it was incredibly shocking when I found out about it, and incredibly emotional because I feel like it's when you begin to see what lives are valued in this country. When I was a part of the organization, we were situated along one of the more trafficked trails in the Arizona desert. So we would have people that would go through the camp and would grab food and stuff along their journey. And we were able to do this legally, although we still get like looks from Border Patrol. Border Patrol has gone through the camp. It has raided it, I think, twice in its history, and has taken people from the camp, a pregnant woman one time as well. But because we are a humanitarian aid organization and we operate under a lot of, we have like our own website and stuff, so we're out there, and that kind of gives us some level of protection. So I think like meeting people who were coming through and hearing their stories, it was something that was really touching to me. It was something that they all had like this similar thread of they want to go and help their family, they want to make money for their family. And it's heartbreaking that when you turn on the news and you see the media, they have this criminalization that they put on immigrants, and in particular with like language that they use, which doesn't seem important, but it's actually really, really important, especially on a subconscious level for us as a society, when they use terms like illegal immigrant, which is, it's interesting when you think about it, because how can a person be illegal? It's like saying your existence is illegal, rather than putting the illegality on your actions. And then some would even argue, like, no borders, and what was the deal with borders as well? It's all like arbitrary. And so, like after hearing their stories, it's something that kind of got to me on a personal level as well. Just with my father coming here from Peru and working so hard for my family to make it here. And seeing how lucky we are to have made it this far. And I guess like seeing people speak with a lot of hope that they can make it here. but like knowing, I guess for myself, knowing that that's not going to be the case for a lot of them. And a lot of them are going to be detained or face death in the desert. And it won't even get any news coverage. So also seeing something that happens along these border towns is a thing called Operation Streamline. And what that is you have probably, so I attended one of these court hearings. And basically you have like 65, 70 people in a room, all people who crossed the border more than once and were caught, and so are then labeled as felons. That's also something that's really important to know, is that when we hear about politicians using this language like, oh, we only want to deport criminals, felon is something that gets labeled to people who are caught crossing more than once. So and it has criminal connotation, but their crime is not violent, right? However, that label is still put on them. So when people say like, we have to deport the criminals, sometimes they are meaning still like just families as well, people who were just caught more than once crossing. And so when I was in that courtroom, there were around 65, 70 people who were caught crossing more than once, and in about an hour and a half, they were charged. And so what happens is they go through the prison system for however many days. It's like a case-by-case thing. And so they were sentenced all in front of us in an hour and a half. And then at the end of their sentences, they get deported. And this is all a part of, like a lot of these detention centers as well are for-profit as well. They also had chains on them, every single person in there. And that was something that was really difficult to see. Because it's a humiliating thing as well to go in front. Like if you could imagine yourself being them, to have to go in front of a judge, in front of people too who were watching, who were just attending the court hearing, knowing you were going to get sentenced anyway, and then deported at the end of it all. And it's a humiliating process. It's dehumanizing. And so, I mean, I think that's all I wanted to share today, and to highlight like the parallels between mass incarceration and mass detention, which is a serious problem in this country, and it's something that doesn't get talked about as much as it should in terms of being a civil rights issue. And I'm really happy everyone's here and that we're talking about it. Hopefully we can get more people to join into this conversation.